Is Lamar Ultimate now the most realistic sim title out there for GT3 cars? Well, they just released a new tyre model update that could make the game the closest yet to real life. And as a Ferrari GT3 driver in real life, I'm going to try the previous tyre model and then the new tyre model to give you some unique insights. We're starting this analysis on the old tyre model, the model that was released with the LMU GT3 update in Lamar Ultimate. Now, in my first review of the game, or this update rather, I really liked it, thought it was super fun, but if I could criticize something, it was the force feedback at low speed. It's also the handling at low speed. Medium and high speed, it's in the window, it feels quite realistic. But at low speed, there's a little bit too much drift action going on. And this is a byproduct of the R Factor 2 physics, which I know for sure that the devs are trying to work on improving, because obviously they've just launched a new tyre model update. But I still want to highlight the difference between the two. And the main thing with the original tyre model that was launched with these cars was that it's too easy to get the cars to drift. Like, the lateral grip in general is missing compared to real life. In real life, you can feel the car gripping into the surface and you can feel it loading up. In the game, it just starts to slide too easily. And it's not like one axle is dominating the other. It's not like the front dominates the rear. It's just, in general, the tire is sliding across the surface too easily. And what this sensation that you get with that tire model is that the rear feels very alive. It's very easy to feel like you're losing the car when you go into some of these slow corners. Like there, I just pitch it in too easily and then it slides the whole way through. And I think this is the genesis of where we're missing force feedback. The force feedback still needs to be improved, but it has to start at the tyre model, because at the end of the day they're trying to simulate the forces of grip that is then getting communicated through the force feedback as well. And if the tyre itself feels too hard and it's just sliding across the surface, which is what we got here, there you go, then you're not going to get the force feedback that you want, sort of the tyre gripping and gripping around the track and through a corner. I'll get my words eventually. Alright, so what we want to do now is we're going to look at a real life lap of Imola in a 296 GT3, Goodyear tires. I'm driving it from last year, so it's very recent, hot day though, and you'll see from my inputs how the cars handle, the sort of how smooth we are with the steering wheel and how much grip there is in the car, and then we'll try and see if that translates to the new tyre model in LMU instead of this drifting experience that we got going on here. So let's get into it. We've jumped into the real life onboard. This is a 296 LMU GT3 on the Goodyear tyre on a hot summer's day, driven by Coach Dave. This is from last year's European Le Mans Series race. And I want to show you how much grip we have compared to the original tyre model for the LMU GT3s, in particular at slow speed corners. So we'll focus on how much grip I have on entry, the sort of linear steering inputs that I'm putting through the car, and I'll also comment on loads and so on. So I'll brake here in a straight-ish line, and when I go through the corner, you'll notice that there is very little lateral sliding, especially from the rear. If anything, through this lap, you'll see the tyre is front limited, and there is a snap coming soon over some of the curves. So here I run a bit wide because I've got exit push. I use too much curve, I get a bit of snap. When we go through this left-hander, which is what I consider a slow corner, the only time I get a bit of sliding is when I get on the power too early at the apex. But through the entry, there's a lot of grip, there's a lot of load. Through this double left as well, high speed corner, very little lateral sliding on the tyre. Now this is a fairly fresh tyre, and it's still with a full fuel load because this is in practice and we always use full fuel. But even still, the grip is there from the tyre. When I went through that double right, the only thing that I was limited by was aero. Next thing here, braking for this chicane. I love how the cars glide over the curbs here, and I would argue that at the moment LMU has the best physics when it comes to climbing curbs, gliding over them without bouncing too aggressively. something that unfortunately ACC at the moment is affected by. Final two left-handers, a little bit of push through the apex because we have so much grip, and really nice on the exit. So overall, you'll see from this onboard, especially compared to what we were experiencing in the LMGT3s in the previous LMU tyre model, was just there was much more grip from the tyre. And if anything, we're limited by aero. So based on those comments now, let's see what the new tyre model is doing in LMU. We've now switched to the new tyre model. You've seen the old tyre model, you've seen a real life lap video. Now how does this update compare to those two things? So in the old model, the rear was sliding around all the time. You're always rear limited, and then as a result of that, just very poor lateral grip. The biggest change that they've made to the tyre in this update is that they've given the car more rear grip. But it's not so simple. They couldn't just give the rear more grip and leave the front. In general, there is more lateral stability on the tyre. Fabrizio, who was the main driver with all the real life feedback, was extremely particular about how he felt the car was moving as each update was made. Now, I'll say up front that this new tyre model update can still have another step, in particular on the front. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. But the main thing that we have now is much more rear stability, thank God, on corner entry. It's no longer so easy to just pitch the car in sideways and drift it through the corners. You have to be much more precise about how you roll off the brake, keep the nose down under braking, under trail braking, which is very realistic to real life, to keep the front down so that you still have the front end grip to make the apex. In the previous update, all I had to do for these final two left-handers was pitch the car in sideways and then drive it off the rear as I went through the apexes. That's no longer the case. I now have to rely much more on actual steering input. Now, here's the key thing. For a top-level esports driver with the high-level esports setup, you can still manipulate the setups in a way that you can pitch these cars in, and I do think some of them will say that it's now more of a drift sim. Maybe. That's at the highest level. But for regular people who are going to drive this simulator, the rear has become much more stable, and you have to use the steering much more, just like we do in real life, as you saw with the onboard videos. We weren't drifting around corners in the onboard. We're actually trail braking in, leaning on the front of the on the front tires, and then using the steering as we should to rotate the car, waiting for the apex, and then getting on the power at the apex when the car was as straight as possible to try and get to 100% throttle. The classic way of driving a GT3 car in real life. And LMU is going towards that sort of technique. This update is massive for that. But there's still two things that I want to see improved. While they strengthened the grip of the rear, I think that the front has lost a little bit of something. And there's going to be some people who will complain that there's too much understeer on power after the apex. Now, a lot of that will come from the habits of the previous tyre model and the physics that were associated to that, where you could get on the power very early. Now you have to wait for the car to rotate through the apex, and then you can get on the power. At the moment, it's a little bit too exaggerated. What I would like to see is that they give us a bit more front grip and take away a bit of the aero grip, right? And I hope that in a future tyre model update that will come. So we keep the rear tyre grip as it is now, because it's a big improvement, increase the front tyre grip, and then decrease slightly the aero. That would be kind of in line with what we have in real life. The LMGT3s, remember, in real life don't have that much aero grip compared to a normal GT3 tyre. We rely quite a lot on the grip of a Goodyear tyre to produce lap time. So right now, I'm much happier with how this tyre is working compared to real life. I'm so happy that they fixed a lot of the rear grip issues, so it becomes less drifty and pitchy, and sort of those exit slides that started already at the apex. This is much more in line with real life physics, but if we could just get a little bit more tire grip on the front, that would be great. Then I think we are bang in the window. And I know, having spoken to the devs, that they're interested in doing something like that. The last thing that I want to say is on the force feedback. Still, improvements need to be made. The haptics in LMU are great. When you're touching curbs, the ABS feeling, when you have contact with other cars, when you go into the gravel. Mwah, love it. But I want to feel more load in the steering. When I go through this corner here, I want to feel the force feedback load up. And we're still missing that. I think that if they increase the grip of the tire, and you can feel it grip into the road, we'll start to get more of that through the wheel as well. But it's still not there yet. It's still not there yet. And that's a big element that I want to see improved in the game. I think the next thing they need to focus on is on the force feedback. In particular, loading through turn-in phases. Loading with aero, loading as the tire grips up. Those are the things, not haptics. Please don't touch haptics. Let's just look at the force feedback next. Huge credit to the dev team for listening to real racing drivers who've tried these tires in these cars. It's a big change to a lot of other developers out there. So this is not an unbiased take. Obviously, I had some input in this new update, so take it for what you want. But I look forward to reading your thoughts in the comment section. This update also comes with brand new cars and a whole bunch of new track layouts, which I think is a really nice little touch. I'm Coach Dave, and until the next one, catch you on the next lap. Peace.